Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks a lot for visiting my channel. I'm going to be going over today the Softube Model 82 synthesizer in its totality. I'm going to be covering the synthesizer just as a tutorial and overview of the actual synthesizer itself, assuming you understand synthesis concepts. Before we start real quick, I wanted to just do a quick plug for the presets that I've created for this synth. It's called the Voltage Modern Analog sound set. It's based around techno and rave music, and it's inspired by the idea of having an analog sound with a modern flavor. Well, thanks for listening to me promote that. Now let's get back to the overview of the synthesizer. So I'm going to open up what I've created here. It's just a default preset, and it's basically just I've set up the synth to a sawtooth wave. Okay, and we're gonna go over this part by part, real simple. Okay, so first thing that I want to go over is the VCO oscillator. Now the way that this VCO works is this VCO right here and this source mixer, this whole unit is all the oscillator. Okay, the VCO and the source mixer. And basically you see here are the wave shapes. This is pulse, sawtooth, sub-oscillator, and noise. Very standard. But the thing about this is in the SH101 and the Softube Model 82, which mirrors that synthesizer, it's only considered one single oscillator. So when you see here three wave shapes, okay, it's not three oscillators, it's only one. And basically the general principle is it's actually like a wave shaping oscillator. So you only have one single oscillator and it's always in tune, okay? And it's always in phase. So you never get a detuned effect. And by bringing in these different wave shapes, you shape one single waveform. So like if you have a saw, okay, and then you bring in a pulse, all you're doing is you're shaping one oscillator between the waveform of a saw and a pulse. And as you can hear, it's perfectly in line. There's no kind of any detuning going on. Okay, now when it comes to the sub oscillator here, you have 1 octave down, 2 octaves down, and 2 octaves down pulse. This is in hardware terms called a divide down oscillator, and basically it means it just takes a single oscillator, it's like the Juno 60, and divides it by half and lets it out as a pulse wave. So this is technically a second oscillator, but it's still not. It's just adding subharmonics into one oscillator. So this whole thing is just one oscillator and adding square triangle harmonics. Square sawtooth harmonics and sub-oscillator harmonics all into one shape. So you'll hear there's never any detuning or phasing going on. So the basic gist of the way that the oscillators work, or the oscillator works here, is that by combining these in different levels and so forth, you can create different sound textures and wave shapes, okay, by basically moving these up and down. Okay, so by having a different variation of these, you can create different tones. For example, here, I bring in 2 oscillators down, 2 oscillators down pulse. Okay, and as you can hear, there's never any chorusing or detuning because, again, everything is only one oscillator, so it's always in phase and always in tune. And like I said before, I'm assuming you understand the synthesis way that works and what I mean by that. If not, you can go read up on it or watch a video about that or something to understand that concept. Then you have a noise. This noise is, a separate sound source. It's just one thing about it is it's pretty loud, like too loud, really, I think. Like it's real. It can be a little bit unusable in the higher ranges. I guess that just models the original hardware. But if you're looking for something usable, it's usable like down here. You know, down. If you want to fine tune it, you hold Control. Okay, and I don't know why my cursor's doing that, but by holding Control, basically, you're able to fine tune, move it around. Okay, now that's the source mixer. So source mixer is just basically the wave shapes and the noise for the single oscillator. And when you go here, you go to range, all right, and that's just 16 octaves. That's all that is. This is pulse width. Okay, so this is controlling this pulse shape, which again, like, it's all just one oscillator, and this is manual. So the more you bring it up, the more you narrow the pulse shape. Okay, and then it goes from square to thin pulse. Then you have here LFO, so this is controlled by the LFO, which we'll go to next. So you can't control the basic like width of the pulse from like a starting position. It always starts at square, and you control how much the LFO affects it. Okay, and this is envelope. So if we kind of change the envelope to like with a decay time, you can hear how that works. Now, the trick here is if you want to get a detuned sound with the synthesizer, your LFO to pulse width is the way to go. Let's bring this up real quick. And like, let's say you bring in a little bit of, you know, you want to have a less detuned sound, you just bring this down, or the rate down. Bring the rate up. Let's increase this. That's how you get the detuned sound from just one oscillator in this synthesizer, is by using LFO, or even using the envelope, and, you know, however you want to use it, just the movement of that pulse width. All right. Now let's go to the LFO, and this is where this mod comes in. Okay, right here for the VCO, this is LFO mod. Okay, so let's bring this in. This is for the pitch. Basically controls how much the LFO goes to the pitch. When you go to the LFO here, you have some basic shapes. This is just like a triangle, square, random, which is like sample and hold, R2D2. And then you have noise. This one is interesting and kind of unique on this synth. And it's an audio rate noise. This is the only time the LFO goes audio rate is noise. So if you start kind of bringing that in, and you bring in some LFO pulse width, you start getting some of these kind of interesting tones. Like a noisy, detuned synthesizer, all from this arrangement. All right. So this is your rate. That's just the clock rate. And here's free and sync to tempo. So let's bring this back to just a sawtooth wave for a second. All right. And then if you take it to a shape that can be clocked, like random, square, or triangle, you get free. It goes up to this fast, which is like a growl, but not audio rate. Or you go to tempo sync. When you go to tempo sync, it shows right up here, like quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, and so forth. Okay, that's for the LFO. Now, one interesting thing about the LFO is that it controls the mod here using the shape as given right here, and the mod for the VCF as that same shape. But when it comes to the LFO for the pulse width, it's always triangle. So like, even if you put a noise on the pitch, when it comes to the pulse width, and you turn it to LFO, it's always triangle at the clock rate, okay, when it comes to the pulse width. So you can actually combine like a noise on the filter or the VCO together with the LFO pulse width to get more interesting effects. Okay, so the LFO and the pulse width is never noise or random or square. All right, and then so that's the LFO. Now let's go to the VCF. For the VCF, we have a standard 24 dB low pass filter, self-resonating. Okay, and then you have controls for the VCF modulation right here. Envelope, mod, which is your LFO, modulator is called mod, and then keyboard tracking. Very straightforward. Let's put the envelope down so it has a little bit of a movement to it, like a pluck. You see there's the envelope controlling that. Okay, then we go to mod. See, it's on noise, so this is another interesting effect, is the noise on the VCF, or you can go to random, square, triangle, again at that clock rate. So you can combine these. So then you're combining like the envelope plus the LFO and so forth, and you kind of slide to how much you combine either one of either. And then you have your keyboard tracking, which is just keyboard tracking, which means the higher you play on the pitch of your keyboard, the higher the cutoff goes. And you turn up the keyboard tracking, you get this. And you decide how much of that you want. All right, that's that. Now we go to the envelope. Basically, standard ADSR envelope, attack, decay, sustain, release. One thing you'll notice automatically is it's always routed to the amplitude and the filter at the same time. It's just like the Juno 60. All right. And the way that we separate it out, we can go to VCA right here. This is part of the envelope. And right now VCA is routed to the envelope. So like if we want that plucky bass sound or something, like we're going to be limited to a short envelope on the VCA. So when you turn it to gate, you get a fully open gate square envelope on the VCA, which is like an organ shape with no release and no attack. And now you can play around with the envelope only to the filter. This is the same way how the Juno 60 works. Now you can get fat, short, plucky sounds. Or, you know, bring in an attack without it affecting the amplitude. All right, so that separates the VCA, but keep in mind there's no release if you do this, right? Whereas if you, so that's how that works. Now, these three selectors, you have gate plus trigger, gate, and LFO. The way that this works, essentially, is that gate plus trigger is like normal, it's like last note priority. Like whatever the newest note you play, it's going to play you know, as you play. But if you go to gate, you have like low note priority, which means like if you're holding a lower note and you play a higher note, it doesn't play. But if you hold a higher note and you play a lower note, it does play. Maybe that can be useful for certain riffs. I don't personally use it, but if somebody likes to play with low note priority, there you go. This is LFO. Basically, the way this works is the LFO clock rate re-triggers this envelope. Okay, so like... obviously when this is applied to like modulation, it applies to everything that it applies to. And it's always just controlled by the clock rate. The shape has no effect, even if you put it to noise. All right. And you can go to tempo sync. And get different effects from that. It can be kind of used as a pseudo LFO and other effects like that. Now we can kind of, another thing I wanted to bring up with this is when you're doing like self-oscillation on the filter and different things like that, be a little bit aware of this sustain level. It's a little bit funky. Like what I mean by that is like, let's get the filter self-oscillating. Let's say you bring up the envelope and the sustain level is all the way up. You hear it actually goes up even though there's no attack. It's some kind of odd thing, I guess. It's replicating a hardware feature, but basically this is like something like 120% sustain. So really what you want to do is like put it somewhere right about there. So the top is about 110. 100 is about the line below the top. You know, somewhere around there. Just fine tune it. I'm just letting you know to be aware of that. Okay. It's kind of an odd feature there. Now let's go to down here. Pitch is tuning. Is just like tunes it up and down a semitone. That's useful when you're doing like modulation on the VCO and so forth, because you bring up some noise here, it can make your sound go out of tune. So you tune it up and down to bring it back into tune, or, you know, just whatever reason you want to tune your synthesizer. This is just an octave selector, same like right here basically, but gives you additional range. Okay, now this is your portamento time, just your glide time, and this is how your portamento is triggered: off, auto, and on. Okay, so when it's off, doesn't matter what it's set to. When it's on, every note glides, whether you play them together or separately. When you go to auto, the notes glide only if you play them legato, but not separately. So this can be useful for, you know, however you want to play your sequences and notes, like, or if you put it on, it's just different effects. All right. Now we'll go over to here. This is just your standard volume control. Has no effect on the tone. Okay. Doubling. This is kind of like, it's not really a chorus. The idea is like when people, for example, record guitar, sometimes they take 2 takes, a little bit off timing each, and pan one hard left, hard right. So that's what this doubling feature is. And it's a little bit odd. I personally don't like it that much because it's not really like a chorus. There's only one setting to how it works. And the only thing this does is determine how much it's spread left and right on stereo. So as soon as you turn it on, you get the full effect. And the only thing this does is spread it stereo or mono. That's it. Drive is just a standard overdrive feature. You can really hear it when you do like a resonance. Like, it's really useful for those 303 effects and all kinds of other things. Be aware of how that changes the tone and other things like that. I've seen somebody like start every patch and they accidentally left it on a little bit and they thought the synthesizer was dull. So just be aware of that. You want to keep it down if it's down and so forth. Now we go to the arpeggiator. Basically the way the arpeggiator works is when you press down, it's going to play whatever notes you're holding on a down direction. Up and down is up and down direction. Or up. Okay, when you press this hold button, you only have to tap the notes and they keep playing, and you don't have to hold them down. Like that. Okay. Now the other thing here is when it comes to the clock rate of the arpeggiator. Okay. The actual rate itself, for example. So let's go to like up. It's set by this. You see, this is a sync. So it's set by either this or the clock rate. So if one of these is clicked, it goes by the sync rate here. Right here, it's 16th notes. Triplets. 8th note. Quarter note. If none of these are highlighted, it goes by the clock rate, which can be, again, it doesn't have anything to do with the shape, just the rate. Free. Or tempo sync. All right. So that's how that works. Now this clock rate applies to the sequencer as well. Okay. And basically, I'm not going to like do too much on the sequencer here. Honestly, the manual is very unclear about the sequencer. It claims it can hold up to 200 notes. I'm not even sure what it necessarily means by that, because from everything I've tested, the sequencer is an 8-step sequencer. So on 16th notes, you get half a bar. On 8th notes, you get 1 bar. And basically, it's like the way you arm the sequencer is when you press load, okay, then you put in the first note. You just type it in with a click or a keyboard step. Then let's say like the next note, you want legato. Then you press legato and you type the next note. Then let's say next note, not legato. Then let's say there's a rest. Okay, so that's 4 steps. Now, let's say I just want another step on step 5. Then step 6. Then let's say I want to rest. And then step 8. Now when I click play, I get my sequence. And this is timed again. Same like the arpeggiator. Now transpose. Okay, if you click transpose, like, okay. It changes based on what key you play. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of the sequencer. One of the biggest reasons, 8 notes, and it's very easy to erase your sequence by pressing like the wrong combination of play and load. Like you press play, then like if you like press load, then unpress it or something like that. It doesn't even tell you in the manual, really, to be honest with you. Then you clear your whole sequence, and you lose everything with no record of it. So it's like more of like a interesting hardware imitation than anything more very useful, I think, in my opinion. Now, and again, this whole DAW sync here is only used for arpeggiator or sequencer. It's not used for anything else, this timing. All right, then let's go here to the bender real quick. The way this works is the bender is tied to the pitch bend, and the trigger button is your mod wheel. Okay, let's do the bender first. All right, if both of these are down, it's not automatically tied to your pitch. So if both of these are down and you do this, you get no effect. Okay, so this controls how much your bender goes to the VCO pitch and how much it goes to the VCF. All right, so you can do a pitch only bender, and it has a fairly broad range, or you can do a filter only bender. Like you can't really hear it there, you got to put it somewhere in the middle. The range isn't that broad on that one. Or you can do both as a blend. So that can be useful for different effects and so forth. Now this trigger is tied to your ModWheel. And as you notice, it's a button, okay? And this is based on the original hardware because the original hardware did not have a wheel. When the button lights up on, it's basically on 100%. And when it's off, it's off. So when you set this LFO amount, this controls an LFO to the VCO and the filter at the same time. So this is like setting a mod amount for here equally. So that's me bringing up my mod wheel, you know, and if I want to do it less, you know, so that's basically how that works. Now, you can switch this into a regular mod wheel, and this is where we get into the side panel. All right, so like you see MIDI modulation here when you click the side panel. This is original, meaning like it's the hardware style. But if you go to continuous, all of a sudden you'll see this light goes up slowly. I personally like that a lot more for most sounds, but you may find different usefulness, you know, for other things with the original. But continuous changes it to a regular mod wheel. And another thing to keep in mind is this LFO only controls it with the triangle shape. So you see how this is on noise? This only gives you, actually it's like a sine shape. You see it right here? So it's like a vibrato effect only. It doesn't give you these other shapes based on what's right here. Now we go to the side panel. You got your skins. This is like 3 different colors. When you save your presets, it's going to be saved with the skins. Okay. And here you have your keyboard control, which is just velocity and aftertouch. So like if I turn up velocity on my VCA and I play, the harder I press the keys, the softer I press the keys, it changes the volume. Okay, and same with the VCF. It's kind of additive, like it goes on top of what's already there. Okay, and it's basically the same concept. If you have an aftertouch keyboard, you bring up how much you want it to affect the VCF or the VCA. Okay, so that's basically it for everything on this face. I'm going to go real quick over the preset selection. You can do it here. There goes like presets, and then right now I'm only showing my user presets because there's a filter here that says user presets, so I clear that. And I can see the factory and the user presets, and they're save as. But I almost never use this. I go to the preset browser because it's much easier. And that opens up this preset browser. Okay. And the way that this works is here you get all these presets. But let's say I only want to have a certain type of preset. So like in my case, I have my sound set. It's the voltage sound set, or I go to user preset. They're saved under user presets for me because it knows that I made them. But let's say I go to voltage. You see how it narrows it down, and now it only shows voltage presets. Let's say I only want voltage bass. Now it just shows that. So as soon as I click on one, okay, it automatically changes the preset underneath. Okay, and everything gets loaded up. It's just like a regular preset selection on a VST synthesizer. Okay, so that's basically how that works, and you can label your own tags by going to here, add tag. Okay, so like right now, you know, whatever tags that I basically have here are going to show up under this thing right there. See, you can add tags. So like this has bass, voltage, and bass, and then this is down here voltage and acid and so forth, and all your tags are here. You can search by tag, by instrument, by sound pack, whatever. You can add your own tags, add your own descriptions. All of mine have descriptions, and you can add these colors. I like to kind of match them with the front panel colors. You can rate each preset, and you can add a graphic label to each preset. Then here, just add like a new preset, save, and save as. So that's basically how that works. So I hope that you enjoyed my overview of the Model 82 synthesizer. Please like and subscribe. Check out my preset pack. It's $15 for 100 sounds. You can hear the video demo on this channel and on the link that I put down below on my actual website as well, where you can get the presets. And really appreciate you sticking around. So have a great day, and thank you very much.